Our rural commodities certainly took a hit, barley and wine, with Chinese exports having tariffs added at the home end. In order for our producers to get their products in there, they've just simply become too expensive, and they just don't take the barley from Australia. Well, we've looked for new markets as a result, and that's been a very, very strong indication from the Australian government that they are having a very strong and stern look at what is going on in China. And the linkage is very obvious, albeit that we may not want to admit that. But there's a good article that's been written at Flow News 24. And Australia's vowed to continue criticising what it says are shocking human rights abuses in China after Beijing suggested that the treatment of Aboriginal people made Canberra's position hysterical. Meanwhile, Australia's SBS broadcaster has dropped Chinese state-sponsored media from its services. Foreign Minister is Marise Payne, and on Monday she signalled she would keep speaking out on China's treatment of the Uighur people in Xinjiang. The media conference on the sidelines of the National People's Congress, that's China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi, took aim at Western nations critical of Beijing. Now, this is what Wang Yi said. Speaking of genocide, many people would have in their minds the Native Americans of the 16th century, African slaves of the 19th century, the Jewish people of the 20th century, and the Aboriginal people who are still struggling even today. It was a very strongly directed claim, but Senator Payne said Australia stood by its statements to the Human Rights Council and other international bodies, evidence that points to the use of forced labour, the use of forced sterilisation, the systematic abuse of and torture of women, and a range of other actions are severe breaches of human rights, clearly enunciating Australia's position. And following a series of complaints, SBS has reviewed the Chinese state-type programming that it had on its channel, and it says that they'd received a complaint about that, and they're reviewing that, and given the serious concerns that the complaints have risen, that the complexity of the material involved, we've made a decision to suspend the broadcast of the overseas-sourced CGTN and CCTV news bulletins while we undertake an assessment of these services. Now, it really is quite a clear indication of Australia saying it's not in agreement with where China is, and particularly China making statements and accusations about how it regards the human rights abuses of countries like us, when one needs to consider its particular position on these things. And one would suggest that this is a skirmish that is going to continue. It could be something that has a direct impact on the reasoning behind where China sits with Australian exports, albeit we have heard even that action has occurred where barley is being supplied to other countries and then finding its way back to China. Yes, I think there's something about saving face in all of these things, and I'm sure that our the Foreign Affairs Department and our Minister is looking at the situation that is there, and, well, there is quite a lot of tension that is arising in a diplomatic sense between China, Australia and the United States at this time.